Hi there, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching, and today we are going to cover all about summer sensitivities. If you feel like your child is sensitive or neurodivergent and they are just really struggling with managing their frustration or their overwhelm in summertime, even sunscreen issues, swimming challenges, just helping them follow through with routine over the summer, then listen up. We have plenty to talk about today. Okay, here at MTC, we help parents of highly sensitive kids eliminate the daily meltdown in as little as 8 weeks. And if your child is hitting or kicking or screaming or yelling or throwing things or running away, then this weighs on you, right? But we also know that it really weighs on your child. And I want to talk about the fact that your child is struggling. We all know that, but let's also pay attention to you, okay? One of the things that we do here at MTC, and we teach our parents all the time, is that you need to make sure that you are pouring from a full cup. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? It's probably something you've heard before. And yet when your child is struggling so frequently and so often and so intensely, it can really feel quite difficult as a parent to find the time to give yourself your energy back, or to spend some time on your self-care, or to spend some time changing the way that you think about your parenting and how you approach parenting, right? So when we break out of this pattern with our clients, we teach our clients to notice what they already see is working well. And then we also teach our clients how to communicate differently so that their child starts responding differently right away. This obviously decreases the intensity of the situation altogether, which allows you to actually have more time in the challenge that you're having with your child. And so I want you to observe that trying to focus on how your child experiences sunscreen, or how your child experiences water splashing on themselves at the pool, or whether or not they survived the 4th of July with fireworks without headphones, for example. All of that is necessary. It's actually important as a parent, right? We know this, that if your child is freaking out or having meltdowns or really struggling with all of these sensory intensities, then it is definitely something for you to pay attention to. I'm not telling you to ignore it. And it's also true that I want us to look at the whole picture, right? We always want to look at what's on the deeper level of causing these meltdowns and causing the emotional intensity that's playing into the meltdown cycle here, so that you're not just trying to solve the end result of the meltdown cycle. You're looking upstream. We're looking at the deeper root cause, so you finally feel free from this whack-a-mole situation that you're in. Because as a parent, if your child has been struggling for the last month or so, we've been out of school for about that amount of time, or maybe a little bit less, but whatever. And you find yourself wrestling an alligator, just like when your child was a toddler, and it's difficult for them to put on their diaper, right? Now it's sunscreen and the challenges that you have there. I know that when my daughter, now I have 2 kids, right? So one is a toddler, so I know full well that half the time we're going to get follow through and cooperation for diaper time, and then other times it is she's sad about it, right? And because she wants to be doing something else, or she's comfortable in her clothes and it's time to change, right? So all of that is well and good for toddlers. It's totally appropriate for toddlers to struggle with sensory challenges, with a change in routine, with a change in their expectations, because as a toddler, my near 2-year-old, right, and the same thing was going on for my first child. They don't understand at the full capacity that your brain is different than their brain, right? This is why they start to say no, because they're so confused, and yet they're still also working through the fact that you have a different agenda than they do. And that is a developmentally appropriate skill set that your kid needs to learn. Now, when you're dealing with this challenge and you're not changing diapers anymore, and your child's already potty trained, or for the vast majority of is potty trained and maybe has some challenges with bathroom issues, and that's probably a different training, right? And yet your child is having a hard time with hygiene or general care, like putting sunscreen on before you go outside. This issue isn't just about choosing the right substance of sunscreen, right? Because obviously if my kid, and you probably address this too, if your kid struggled and built a rash up from the harshness of whatever chemical they were using to in the wipes, you would change the wipes, right? I've done that. That's necessary. And yet I also communicated to my daughter and do the same thing with my toddler to help her accept reality. Now is the time for us to be handling your diaper change. And we do the same thing with sunscreen, both in our house and what we teach our clients, right? Because it's not just the sensory issue of the smell of the wipes, the smell of the sunscreen, right? A toddler's going to respond in a toddler manner. If your 7-year-old is struggling with sunscreen and you have to wrestle them, we have a problem here that I really want you to notice. It's not about the sunscreen. It's not about how tight your grip is around their waist with your legs, that you've got them in a vice while you're wrestling them to hold them down to get them sunscreened. It's not about what sort of if this then that language you're using to threaten your child to communicate to get them to get the sunscreen on. Your child's nervous system is really struggling with what's going on here. And I'm going to talk about that today because your child's emotional response impacts their sensory needs, okay? So what's important for us to pay attention to, So what's important for us to pay attention to is the fact that when your child's emotions impact their fight or flight system, they will change how they react, right? And this comes full circle. They play into each other. If your emotions are high, your fight-flight response is high. If your fight-flight response has an easy trigger, your emotions will get higher, right? So it is really important for you to be clear that when your child is losing it, related to sunscreen, related to splashing water on the face, related to the pool being too cold, related to the noise in the pool echo, for example, or their friends wanting to play a game that they don't want to play. It's not about the game. It's not about the sunscreen. It's the problem can't be solved at that level. You might want to just teach your child to tolerate other people's ideas. That might be your solution. You might have already tried that, right? Try to reason with your child after the meltdown's over. Okay, wow, that was really hard. Let's plan for when your child when your friend doesn't want to play Marco Polo anymore, or doesn't want to dive anymore, or doesn't want to play your pretend game anymore. Let's plan for that, right? You might want to have a logical conversation with your kid. You might have already tried this. And quite frankly, without this knowledge in the system that I use, I probably would have done the same thing. It's human to want to have a conversation, right? The challenge here is that your child doesn't speak through spoken language within their emotions. Their emotions are playful. And so when you're not changing how your child feels about this situation related to their friend or the sunscreen, then your child's fight, flight, freeze response will still get triggered, right? So when we look at this as an intertwined issue, then it's a lot easier to take a different approach to solve the problem than just trying to solve the matter at hand from a crisis of the week mentality, right? So crisis of the week mentality would be, okay, my son Joey had a hard time with his friend Brad. Brad wanted to play Marco Polo, and my son wanted to dive. So I'm going to talk to my son after he yells at Brad, after he tells Brad that he's having, that he's not a good friend anymore, after he tells Brad that he doesn't want to play with him anymore, and he's not invited to his birthday, and, he stomps around and he's, gets out of the pool, or he shoves Brad or splashes Brad in the face, right? All the stuff that, Joey doesn't like himself. Joey freaks out when water gets splashed in his face, for example. Okay, so we have this situation going on. You might notice, all right, Joey is not available, right? Like most coaches will tell you, most parenting experts will tell you, big influencers will tell you, this is not a teachable moment, okay? I'm right there with you. I agree with that. It's not a teachable moment unless you know how to teach in that moment. But if that's all you know, then what you'll hear is just hold space, like ride it out. Okay, notice the kid's feelings. All right. So you've got a publicly melting down or angry, splashing child who's mistreating somebody else in public, or maybe this is happening at home in your own pool or whatever, but it's, context doesn't necessarily matter. The root cause is the conversation that we're having here. I hope you hear me with that, because when you're stuck in the meltdown cycle, you will try to nitpick every little thing related to the context of your situation, and you will treat it as if it is different than yesterday's meltdown. All right. So this is what crisis of the week mentality will do for you. It is survival mode mentality, and it will make you feel impoverished in your belief system. So I want to help you break out of this pattern. So the focus is that, and when I say impoverished, means like there's not enough. I never have enough knowledge. I never have enough solutions. I can never have enough conversations with my kids, so I must talk about it over and over again till the cows come home, till I'm blue in the face, right? I mean, I'm even getting worked up in this. You can hear it in the tone of my voice, or hear me catch my breath, even just living that out in this show today, right? It's incessant. Crisis of the week mentality will get to be, okay? So when you feel like you need to communicate after the meltdown to your child, you're going to get stuck in this, right? Your child is either going to dismiss you, say, yeah, I already know what to do, and lovingly and thrillingly tell you all of the things that you wish they had done in the moment, because they're smart, because they're clever, because when they're calm, they're very emotionally regulated, right? And they're very creative. And that might happen. So you might think, okay, all right, my kid knows what to do. They're growing. They're figuring this out. Sure. Maybe I just need to give them more time. All right. Rehearsal is good. Practice makes perfect. Okay. Let's give them another chance. Let's set up the play date for Brad later, or let's throw him back in the pool because we just had a nice moment. It took us 30 minutes, but he's good now. Right. Okay, you might think that. You might also have an issue where Joey dismisses you and doesn't want to talk about it. Mom, leave me alone. You're embarrassing me, right? Or shuts down, and their whole face and their whole body is just totally not present in the moment at all. And they're internally freaking out. Or you get the external explosion. I don't want to talk about it. It's all Brad's fault. Or it's all you made me come to the pool. I didn't want to come, right? It could run the gamut. Your kid can respond in any of these ways. If you're just trying to solve the problem after the fact, your child will continue to have a mismatch in your communication because their nervous system is generally living like a simmering pot. This is one of the things that I teach my clients all the time. You might think that your kid goes from 0 to 60 just like that. You might even hear this from other professionals in the field, right? What happens if you have a kid who feels deeply and then all of a sudden they pop off? But what we know here at MTC and what we teach our parents to notice the signs is that your child is simmering under the surface all dang day if they're in the meltdown cycle. I'm just going to let that land here. This is a big deal because if your child is just super close to popping off all day long, that doesn't mean they're going from 0 to 60. It means they're going from 58 or 59 to 60. That's why sunscreen is hard. That's why their conversation style is not effective when they're surprised or upset or disappointed or feeling let down or hurt, right? So when you're living life stressed out, right, you can pretend like you're doing just fine. Right? I mean, look at celebrities who later describe mental health issues, right? I mean, you could just look at society. Look at yourself. When you're hurting inside, unless you're speaking to your close family or someone else that you really trust, you probably pretend like everything's fine, right? If you're seriously struggling inside, it is self-preservationist to isolate your emotions and keep them from anyone you love, including your parents, including your spouse, right? You're not going to let your kids know. Most often, if you're really, really struggling. Now, if you had emotion regulation skills, if you felt resilient, if you had emotional intelligence skills, then regularly you would probably be a-okay naming your emotions and letting them go like sand in an hourglass. But most of the time we see parents who have a general level of emotion regulation. They know that they're supposed to take care of themselves, but they're stuck in a huge pattern with this meltdown cycle. And so you start to dismiss your own needs or compartmentalize them. Like you go to the gym, right? But in general, you're really frustrated and you yell at your kids pretty frequently, or you rehearse in your head how you're going to handle this problem with your kid over and over and over again. You're stuck in rumination, or you let loose on your spouse at night when the kids are in bed so that you don't end up taking it out on your kids, and your kids don't see you fight, right? So there's these pockets, and please know there's no judgment here. We're here to help you. But there's these pockets of generally doing fine presentation-wise in terms of your behavior that is being passed on to your kids. It's the same cycle. It's the same cycle going on with your child. So when we teach our clients how to break out of that pattern themselves and then also playfully communicate to their kids, like, you can't fake play. You can't. Like, you can't, right? Play has to be genuine, has to be communicated lovingly. Your child's going to read you like a book if you're just like flippy floppy trying to play, right? Your child's going to feel like you're disinterested in them, and you don't want to do that, right? So you usually just say, I don't think I can fake it, so I'm just not going to do it at all. But when you make play easy, then it's much more effective to communicate to your child in a playful way about their emotions, and we slow down the process. It becomes more simple. Then your child can be redirected playfully in the moment when they're raising their voice, or in the moment when they're about to splash back, or in the moment when they're running from across the room to wrestle away from the sunscreen. So they take charge, right? So I have a 7-year-old, and she puts her own sunscreen on. Now, obviously, I spot check because we don't want her to get sunburned. But what the challenge is noticing that as a sensitive kid, when she was a toddler, she definitely wanted to run away. We had to teach her to notice and slow down that that sunscreen would be something she could tolerate. Now, she's in my room right now because it's summertime. So I'm recording this show, and we homeschool. So she's hanging out, reading a book and doing her thing. And she's over there nodding. She's like, Mom's telling the truth. It's so funny. Hi, I love you. She knows she's supposed to be silent because this is a show. I was like, I don't really want to deal with the editing of this, honey. Can you help me out? So she's over there snacking and reading a book. But she's making me laugh. So we'll keep it real over here in the Thompson household. We've got this, so you don't think that I'm just laughing at you, right? I'm laughing at my kid. So we've got this situation where if your child isn't able to notice what they can control in the moment and notice that in the moment, rather than you just telling them after the fact what they can control, then they won't feel capable of changing their automatic reaction. And this is where the fight, flight, freeze response overrides the emotional intensity in the household. It overrides your child's capacity for doing something different in the moment, right? Because you and I both know that you can have logical conversations with anyone, your friend, your spouse, your therapist, your mentor, whatever, me, yourself, that you can logically say, yeah, I know what I can do instead of raise my voice. I know what I can do instead of, get frustrated and make empty threats. I know what I can do, blah, blah. You know what you can do. Just like your kid knows what they can do. They're smart. They've heard you before. But what overrides the memory, right? It's not practice. Practice is part of it, but it's not practice. It's not practice, because if it was just practice, then you would be at this thing for years. And we would be telling our clients they'd be at this thing for years. But we help parents break out of the meltdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks. So you tell me, is it practice? Is it just logically understanding the problem? Or is it something different? What if you could train your child's brain to react differently in the moment of the stressor? In the moment of the challenge, even when you're in public, even when you're at home and you got to get out the door, even when you have an emotional challenge and you're struggling there, right? Mads, can you chew with your mouth closed, please? Because I can hear you from here. Thank you. I don't know if it's going to catch on the recording. Thank you. All right. It's tasty, huh? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I don't want anybody to hear the thing. Okay, right? So you know that this challenge isn't just about knowledge. Information isn't transformation. It gets you started, right? It gets you started. But the best information, the most impactful information, is one that helps you make decisions, right? The only way you can make decisions and then take immediate action is if you have information that inspires you, not information that teaches you the nitty-gritty every single time. Because like I said before, when I was come first full circle in this conversation, the cyclical conversation you're having in your head is, well, my kid needs to know, my kid Joey needs to know exactly how to talk to Brad, and needs to know exactly how to tolerate getting splashed in the face, needs to know how to tolerate exactly what to do with sunscreen or lotion, right? So that once they know that, then they will behave differently. And children are not logical beings. So human beings, we're not logical. We're emotional beings. So your child needs to learn how to emotionally respond differently, right? Isn't that going to be more effective? When your child responds emotionally differently to surprise, then your child can behave differently, right? So you see why telling you what to do and how to get your kid to behave, or 27 free ways for your kid to not be bored this summer isn't going to help you get your kid to tolerate boredom? It's just going to give you more work. My 3 best sunscreens that are less sticky, like, come on. You can throw $10 out the window and expect yourself to find the sunscreen that works for your kid. I'm not going to do that for you, right? You don't need that. You're smart. 4 summer activities that are non-sensory, like what? Right? Like, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. How does it work, right? When you learn how to regulate your emotional management, and you learn how to change your nervous system so you're not always in fight, flight, freeze and frustration and aggravation or worry, wart behavior, then you can clearly learn how to notice when your kid is in that moment, but their words are telling you something else. That's the ticket. That's the ticket to emotional freedom. Okay, so if you want to know how to do that, then you have to get a mentor to teach you, because I can't talk to you till you're blue in the face, and till I'm blue in the face, and not have feedback back to you about whether or not you're impacting, you're receiving the knowledge that I'm impacting, right? That conversation has to be had with a person who can watch your body, or can teach you how to watch your body, and then teach you how to communicate differently, right? In the moment, once you have that body sensation awareness. And when you're changing your emotion awareness first, and you're not bringing the body along with it, it's just not going to go very far, right? You can talk yourself into feeling differently, but that's basically because you're wearing yourself out. And the understanding has to be from a completely different level of communication. And your body's nervous system impacts how triggered you are in the first place, right? So if you want to learn how to break out of this pattern, then I encourage you to book a call with my team, right? We're going to be able to talk about the emotional intensity that you have. And I got to tell you, there are so many parents in the world right now who simply cannot tell me how they experience all of their emotions in their body. And this is part of the factor that contributes to whether or not you'll be able to teach it to your kid. You can't impart that knowledge and notice it in the moment when you're trying to get your kid out the door, or notice it in the moment when you're trying to get your kid to tolerate fireworks, or notice it in the moment when you're tired, or you're trying to figure out, is your child tired, or are they just really struggling with the disappointment and they need help with emotional resilience, right? When do I demonstrate grace, and when do I communicate that this is hard and they can do hard things? That level of critical thinking is a different way to solve this challenge. But it creates so much more freedom in your day-to-day life if you don't just eliminate the meltdowns. You also work on teaching your child to regulate themselves. And you have to have somebody looking at you and noticing how you feel your feelings and assessing whether or not you're dealing with that properly. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to effectively see outside your own bottle, if you will, like your own viewpoint. You can't change your perspective just by hearing somebody talk at you, right? So happy to talk to you about that problem that you have, right? MeganThompsonCoaching.com/chalk. The conversation's free. You can have that conversation It will be one that is full of depth. I'm going to ask you hard questions. My team will ask you hard questions. We're going to take a look at where you're struggling, what your challenges are in parenting your sensitive kid, whether or not you're believing that your kid just can't turn this around because they're neurodivergent, because they're sensitive, because of their temperament, or both, right? And whether or not that's right, whether or not that actually sets you and your child up for success. And part of that is in understanding what's possible for your particularly unique family, given your particularly unique goals. And if you're just trying to get by summertime by summertime, then our work probably won't be a fit, and I will likely refer you out. But if you want to be able to have your child thrive and prioritize that now so that your child can live their best life now, honey, no thank you. Then I encourage you to book a call so we can turn this around swiftly, because this is the only summer you're going to get in 2024, right? And at the time of this recording, it's almost halfway through if you've got your kid in school outside of the home, right? So let's make the most of it. Okay, I'll talk to you soon.